Milan is often introduced as a city of fashion, finance and football. But for 17 years it was also Leonardo da Vinci's home base, his studio, his laboratory and his playground. On this November day we set out to walk as much of Leonardo's Milan as we could fit into a single day, from soaring cathedrals and quiet libraries to flying machines, war engines and evening canals. Our starting point is the obvious one, the Duomo. Milan's cathedral took nearly 6 centuries to complete, and you can feel that long story in every corner, from the patterned marble floor and forest of columns to side chapels, altars, and the tombs of saints resting in glass cases. It was already well underway when Leonardo arrived in Milan in the 1480s to work for Duke Ludovico Sforza, but the cathedral still had a major problem: how to finish the great tower over the central crossing, the Tiberio. In 1487 a design competition was announced and Leonardo submitted his own engineering solution. His proposal for a more stable, almost fortification-like tower wasn't chosen, but sketches of the design survive in his notebooks. So as we wander past the altars and stained glass, it's worth remembering that this wasn't just another church for Leonardo. It was a live engineering puzzle, right on his doorstep. Inside, the cathedral still feels like a place where faith, art and technical ambition meet. Very much Leonardo's world. From the roof, you can really see what he was up against. The Duomo is a stone forest of spires, pinnacles and flying buttresses. Breathtaking, but also a structural challenge. It's easy to picture Leonardo up here with a sketchbook, thinking about loads and stresses rather than selfies and skyline shots. From up here you also get a perfect view of our next stop, the grand archway of the Galleria Vittorio Emanuele II. Stepping from the cathedral into the Galleria is like fast forwarding a few centuries. The Duomo's marble was hauled here by canal and cart. The Galleria's iron and glass roof belongs to the industrial age. This 19th century arcade is sometimes called Milan's living room, a place for cafes, window shopping and people watching under the glass dome. It's a nice reminder that cities keep reinventing themselves long after the original artists and engineers have gone. For Leonardo, Milan was exactly that, a city in transition and a place ready to experiment. Which brings us to our first immersive Leonardo stop of the day. Leonardo 3 is a modern exhibition that brings Leonardo's notebooks to life. Here, many of the sketches you might have seen in books are turned into scale models and interactive displays. There's an entire room of machines that never left the page in Leonardo's lifetime. War carriages, multi-cannon gunships, and ingenious 3-tiered weapons that predate modern machine guns. In another corner there's a mechanical knight, an early stab at robotics, and the recreation of his famous mechanical lion. According to accounts from the French court, Leonardo built a lion that could walk forward, open its chest and present a bouquet of lilies to the king. It was part engineering showpiece, part diplomatic theatre. The exhibition also lets you flip through digital versions of his notebooks, including pages from the Codex, where all of these ideas began as tiny, tightly packed sketches and mirror writing notes. There's even a recreation of the Last Supper. We'd hoped to see the real thing at Santa Maria della Grazia, but 5 weeks before our trip, every slot was already booked. And even if you do manage to get a ticket, photography inside is very restricted. so this exhibition is actually one of the easier places to show the scene on camera. From here, our walk continues to a quieter stop that holds some of Leonardo's most precious originals. The Pinacoteca Ambrosiana isn't a household name like the Uffizi or the Louvre, but it's one of Milan's great hidden treasures, closely tied to Leonardo. Inside, the galleries are full of luminous religious paintings and delicate illuminated books of hours. But tucked among them are two pieces that link directly back to our wandering Florentine. First, there's Raphael's huge cartoon for the School of Athens, a preparatory drawing almost the size of the finished fresco. Raphael used techniques that had been perfected by Leonardo, and he used Leonardo's likeness when painting Plato in the scene. And then, in a smaller, more intimate frame, Leonardo's Portrait of a Musician, the only easel painting by him that remains in Milan. The sitter's identity is still debated, but the alert expression and beautifully painted hands feel very Leonardo. In the adjoining Biblioteca Ambrosiana, you'll find the reason many people come here: the Codex Atlanticus. This is the largest surviving collection of Leonardo's drawings and notes, over 1,000 pages ranging from flying machines and weapons to musical instruments and studies of plants. For conservation reasons, the original folios are displayed in rotation, and you may just see a single bound volume in its glass case, along with a few framed sheets. But there's something quite moving about standing in front of pages he actually handled, compared to the reconstructions we've just seen at Leonardo III. Beneath all this, the San Sepolcro crypt adds a much older layer. Parts of the paving stones down here are said to have come from the Roman Forum. Leonardo even sketched a plan of this church and crypt in his notebooks, so our Da Vinci trail literally runs under our feet. From the Ambrosiana, it's a short street walk towards Castello Sforzesco, the fortress palace of the Sforza family, and Leonardo's workplace for much of his Milanese career. Leonardo spent around 17 years in Milan, serving in the Sforza court as both painter and engineer. He described himself to the Duke not just as an artist, but as someone who could design bridges, fortifications, canals, and war machines. Inside the castle walls, you get a sense for the scale of that world, a place for ducal apartments, armories, and grand reception halls. One of those halls, the Sala delle Asse, was decorated by Leonardo around 1498. He covered the ceiling and upper walls with an illusionistic tangle of mulberry trees, turning the room into a painted garden canopy. Art, botany, and geometry all mixed together. At the time of our visit, the Leonardo room was closed for restoration, along with some of the displays we'd hoped to see. So we settled for exploring the courtyards and reading about his designs for the castle's defences and ravelins. Restoration work on the Sala delle Asse is ongoing, with a new phase approved to safeguard the fragile wall paintings. Even without going inside, it's still a key stop on a Da Vinci walk. This was effectively his office address for years. By late afternoon, with the light starting to fade, we headed to the National Museum of Science and Technology Leonardo da Vinci. The name is not an accident. This museum hosts one of the most extensive Leonardo galleries anywhere, with around 1,300 square meters of displays and some 170 models, artworks, and historical objects telling the story of Leonardo the engineer. In the Leonardo galleries, you'll see familiar concepts from earlier in the day, but interpreted in a more technical way. A beating wing mechanism, a man dangling from an early parachute, screw-based devices exploring how to generate lift, and glider-like structures that look surprisingly modern. There are also models of fortifications, war machines, and a scale model of the Duomo that helps you visualize its construction. A nice callback to where we began. Among the drawings are studies connected to the Last Supper, including expressive head and hand studies for the apostles and for Judas. They're a reminder that even these grand wall paintings were built up from many individual drawings, each one testing a gesture or expression. We didn't have time to see everything before closing, but we did pass through a small transport section with early cars like a De Dion Bouton and a beautiful 1930s Alfa Romeo. Then a huge shed full of steam locomotives, a tram and an omnibus. Outside there's a submarine and even a European space rocket. A nice full circle moment from Leonardo's speculative drawings to real machines that finally achieved things he could only imagine. With the daylight almost gone, we ended our Da Vinci day on the Navigli canals. These waterways began centuries before Leonardo, but during his time in Milan, he was heavily involved in improving the canal system, designing locks and studying how to link Milan more efficiently with the River Adda and ultimately with Lake Como. His ideas about pound locks and managing changes in water level were ahead of their time and influenced later canal engineering. Today, the Navigli are better known for bars and restaurants than barges of marble, but they still carry traces of his work. We tried to find one of the historic lock structures sometimes associated with Leonardo, but in the fading light and with tired legs, we didn't manage it. Instead, we settled for watching the reflections as the cafes lit up and the sky turned orange. By the time we made it back to our hotel, we'd completed over 20,000 steps. Not a bad effort for a November day. In one day, we'd climbed the Duomo, wandered under the Galleria, stepped inside Leonardo's notebooks, stood in front of his original drawings, walked in the courtyards where he worked for the Sforzas, and finished beside the canals he helped to tame. Of course, we only scratched the surface. Leonardo lived in Milan on and off for years, and his traces are scattered all over the city. But if you've only got a single day and a good pair of walking shoes, this route gives you a taste of Da Vinci's Milan, a city where art, engineering, and everyday life have always been closely intertwined.